Welcome to First Responder Financial Freedom Podcast. We talk to first responders all over the nation who are investing and working on businesses outside of their first responder jobs. Our goal is to motivate and educate each other and help provide a better financial understanding for a better future. Now here are your hosts, Mike Webb, Tyler Thrush, and Aaron Foster.
First Responder Financial Freedom with our buddy April Crossley from Pennsylvania, who is well-traveled around the country. Mike Webb, Tyler Thrush, and myself, Aaron Foster. We're going to dive deep into April's adventures from single motherhood to nursing to RV, traveling across the country to deleting her entire inbox to everything under the sun. So April, thanks for coming to spend an hour with us. I really appreciate it. The deleting your inbox has stuck out in my head for like a month now. So tell me what got you started. Like, where did you start before you were in real estate? What was the driving factor? Like, where are you at now? What are your projections?
Yeah. So I was in healthcare for 13 years. I worked as a respiratory therapist in trauma critical care. So as you guys know, you get, you're working like in the thick of it. I feel like for 13 years, I was just trained to be like emotionally numb, pretty much. That's what happens when you work in a field like that. Prior to working in healthcare, I had my son very young. And I only mention that because it has kind of like played into my real estate work that I've done or stuff that I want to do now that I have more financial freedom. I want to do things that have more purpose. But I had my son when I was 16. So I went from like being 16 and being on welfare to when I graduated high school and had to go to college, I was kind of like, under the gun to like, what do I want to be? Because I had to grow up really fast and I have to go to school for something. And my son just happened to be like very sick when he was younger with respiratory problems. So we were always like working with respiratory therapists. So I ended up going to school, and I tell everyone my bachelor's degree is in biology. So you shouldn't believe anything I say about real estate, I guess. But I went to school, got my bachelor's degree in biology, became a respiratory therapist, worked in healthcare for 13 years. And for anyone that works in the hospital or works in healthcare, back when I started, I was like in it to help people and spend time with my patients. And it's just become a whole business monster now that doesn't really allow you the time to do that. It's like, how many patients can you see during your shift? How fast can you crank things out? You don't really have time to educate your patients or spend with your patients. It was getting really frustrating. In fact, before I left healthcare, I would come home like every day and either cry or I'd cry before I went into work because I was that frustrated, not with like my job, just like the whole system in general and like what was expected of us compared to what you can actually complete in a shift. And just how I felt like patients weren't getting very good care at all. So it was very upsetting. And when I was exiting it, like when I was crying to my husband the one day, he was like, you know, if you would spend as much time on your real estate business as you do in healthcare and like learning about healthcare stuff, you could have a super successful real estate business. And I was like, wow, that kind of like hits you. Like I'm pouring all this time and energy into my department at my hospital and everything like that. And I could be pouring it into real estate. So I got interested in real estate because my husband had 2 small rental properties when I met him. And he had a book on vacation called The 1 Minute Millionaire that was just like laying around. He brought it on vacation. I was bored. I picked it up. I started reading it. And I was like completely financially uneducated. I didn't come from a family background where people had wealth or had real estate or anything. I was pretty much taught to like hate wealthy people. I always heard my parents talking smack, like how wealthy people rip you off and this and that. So all this stuff in this book just talked about like how you can buy a house and pay down put a tenant in it and they're going to pay down the mortgage for you and you can keep the equity and all this. And I said to my husband, why would someone do that? Why would someone pay someone else's house off? Like that seems absurd. And my husband's like, you're literally doing that for your landlord. Cause I was renting and he's like, you have this great job at a hospital, but you're renting and you're paying off your landlord's house. And I was like, damn, Like another moment of like,
valid point.
yeah, like that really hits you. So my husband actually taught me like how to buy my first house and how to like balance a checkbook. And it seems insane, but like I somehow survived all the way through college with just like going to the ATM machine, getting a receipt and saying, okay, that's how much is in my bank account. I can live on that this week. And then just week to week living by the ATM receipt, like no balance sheet, no checkbook, no QuickBooks, no nothing.
I feel like a lot of people do that. Like even today, like
Yeah.
we're in a different realm now, but like once you learn it, you're like, oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
But a lot of people like even like I know tons and tons of people like that in the fire department, all first responders who are like, oh yeah, I just look at my checkbook or my phone and I'm like, okay, I've got this much left in now. I got money coming in Friday, so I can pay this bill, and this bill. I'm good. It's like, man, you got to budget somewhere. Like, where's your savings at?
Yeah.
It's a good valid point.
Yeah. And now it's funny. Now I use like the bucket system, which is kind of like, I think like the profit first system. So I have like all my buckets, like my financial freedom account, all that kind of stuff. And we can talk about that then if you want to. But back then I literally knew nothing. So when I worked in healthcare, I just started, once I read this book, I became obsessed. Like I was just like fascinated. Like I couldn't believe this was real. So I feel like I almost pursued real estate to prove the book wrong because that's how I am. And that's like how my mindset was at the time. And I pursued real estate and it turned out to be right. So what happened is like I read this book, and when I read the book, I was in school for my master's degree because I wanted to be the CEO of a hospital. So I was shadowing a CEO. I'm in school for my master's degree. I'm like going down this path, read this book and was like, okay, I can learn about real estate or I can continue with my master's degree. I'm going to go take a $20,000 real estate course and I'm going to learn about real estate. And so I dropped out of my master's program, took a guru course, and don't regret it. It was super expensive. It wasn't the best. You didn't get really any support, but it taught me a lot. Flipped my first house. And you know, when you flip a house and you come from a background of, I'm on food stamps to, okay, now I have a job in a hospital, so I'm not on welfare anymore, but I don't really know how to manage my money. And I'm just getting a receipt out of the ATM to see how much I have, to now I flipped a house and made $20,000. Like that's massive, massive. I was like, so we worked on this for 4 months and I got $20,000, like a chunk of money to like pay off school debt and my car and everything like that. It was pretty phenomenal. So once that happens, then you just start chasing that more and more. And that's what I did for like we flipped our first house in 2004, but I didn't retire from healthcare till 2013 because I was just dabbling in real estate, doing it on the side. Like I would flip 2 houses a year, sometimes 3 houses a year, bought some rentals, never really like took it seriously, never ran it as a business, just kind of like, this is my side gig. Like I'd be working in the hospital and everyone would be like, come down to the lunchroom and sit with us and eat lunch or eat dinner. And I'm like, I can't, I got to fold letters. Like I did everything by myself. I was folding letters, stuffing envelopes, putting stamps on them. Like I don't have time to be sitting in the lunchroom. I got letters to fold. And eventually my department would start like folding letters with me. They'd be like, okay, we can eat lunch up here. Let's all fold letters, which is pretty nice.
Let me ask you a question. Like what you said mindset earlier. I want to kind of focus on that. So when did you realize that your mindset shifted? Like at what stage or what age or what was the determining factor when you said, you know what, I need to change my thought process now? Like where was that?
You know what? It's really interesting. Like, I feel like everybody talks about your why a lot. And I feel like your why and your mindset and everything evolves as you evolve. Like, I don't think your why stays the same forever. I don't think your mindset stays the same forever. I think it evolves as you evolve. So the more you learn and the more people you get around that think bigger and think differently than you, the more your mindset evolves. So I was such a solopreneur for a long time, just in my own world, learning about real estate, buying real estate on the side, no business partner, no nothing. My mindset never really shifted. Honestly, I feel like I still had a very poor money mindset. Honestly, probably till about 3 or 4 years ago. Like just being brutally honest, like you can grow wealth and you can do very well for yourself And but I feel like you're never going to reach like the epitome of what you want to reach in here, like peace wise, until your mindset shifts. And sometimes you don't know it's still shitty until you get around other people that make you realize that. Like, I still ingrained in my brain thought like any person who came from a place of wealth that was handed real estate by their parents or handed their businesses and didn't have to scratch, claw, dig, climb like I did to build what I've built, they're nothing compared to me. Like, they're not gonna do anything in life. They're just gonna piss that money away. Like, good things aren't gonna come of it. And I used to think like that, and that was all because I was like taught that like wealthy people are terrible people. And so what happened is I ended up joining a mastermind like 3 years ago with people that are like super wealthy, whose parents were also super wealthy, that could give them all the money they wanted to if they wanted their kids to live that way. And they are really great people that are massively changing other people's lives throughout the entire world because they were taught to care for that money well. Does that make sense? Like, they weren't spoiled and just handed everything like I thought kids that came from money were. And they were taught to take care of other people and donate to charity and change people's lives and build orphanages. And they do amazing things. So when I joined this mastermind and started getting around people like that, I was like, wait a minute. So like, these people are wealthy. They come from wealth, but they're still really good people. And if I can just like change my mindset, I can do equally amazing things throughout the world.
So let me, I want to ask Mike and Tyler about this too, because I want to see if they ever had a light bulb moment or like a mindset shift. And what point was that? Mike, you want to go first or Ty? Don't matter.
Go for it, Mike.
A light bulb moment. I would say for me, I've always had a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, but and that goes back to like when I was still in like grade school. But I would say the catalyst for me is whenever I found out I was having my oldest son, like I started like planning and looking at stuff and just kind of like realizing what now that responsibility was, not just like on a day-to-day basis, but financially. And I remember looking at how much it cost to go to Disney. And I remember then being like, all right, well, if I divide that by like how much over time, I was like, oh, cool. I can take him there, but it's going to require I work like 3 months or whatever it was. So I remember that being like, I have to change basically the thought of just working overtime shifts for more money. I need to find different streams of income that don't require me to trade the time for money. Mm-hmm. And I always knew that, but I didn't like really embody it at that stage. But since then, that was basically, if I had to pick one moment, that's what I would reference.
What about you, Tyler? When did you have that light bulb moment or that mindset shift?
It's funny. I don't know, because honestly, I've always had that like entrepreneurial spirit. Like, I always wanted to figure out ways to make side money and do my own thing. And then I had grandparents who invested and stuff like that. And for me, I was just thinking when Mike was talking, it's funny because like my grandfather passed away in 96 and my grandmother passed away this year. But because of the way they invested and they had passive investments, whether it's note investing, property investments, she never worked a day in her life from that point forward. And all these little things that I saw and the people I got around with, I noticed that there was a lot of common themes, and a lot of it wasn't them going to work 9 to 5 and becoming financially free. So I started listening to podcasts, reading, and because I was in title insurance and the mortgage industry, I was around a lot of people who were investing in real estate. So for me, it wasn't like one moment. It was just a cumulative effect of seeing the same thing. What do they say? Like, success leaves clues. It's these people are all doing the same thing and they're living a life that I wouldn't mind like living, right? And it's funny that April said that. I grew up, like my parents are blue collar, and they didn't necessarily as much, but when she says that, it makes me laugh because most people blue collar, you are taught to distrust people who have a lot of money because there's no way they could have ever got it in an honest way. It had to be something dishonest. They had to take advantage of somebody, and that's why they have their money. And like you said, that's totally not true. And I think a lot of people who raise their kids there's that split too that I also saw because I ended up going to a private school for high school. There's a lot of kids who came from money, did absolutely nothing with it. They were not motivated, but the ones that actually followed in their parents' footsteps, they took those same principles their parents had, and they had a huge head start, because a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, I feel like I can't wait to pass on to my kids, but I definitely had no clue what I was doing.
I had a chip on my shoulder when I was younger, and we talked about this in another episode. Like when I was growing up, I was very much the same way. Like it's me versus the world, and like I see that as I've gotten older and I talk to people, and especially since I used to work with kids, it's like they have this mentality: me against the world. Nobody's gonna help me. I gotta figure it out myself. They don't have my best interest in heart. But you start getting around some of these people, and not all. I mean, you got bad rich people and you got good rich people. Some of these people are jerks. We'll say jerks. That's a good word, jerks. And some of them are absolutely like they want to bring you up with them. And it's interesting. Like once I started rubbing elbows with some of these people as I got older, it was like, wow, like they're not all jerks. Like my mindset shifted when I was in my early 20s. And I've been around. DC is full of everything from lawyers, liars, politicians, rich people, poor people. Like there's everything's a melting pot here. So I think it's a good thing to highlight is that when you surround yourself with the equivalent of the 5 people you spend the most time with, if you can get yourself around somebody or a group of people who are motivated to achieve and push each other, then it's going to make your life better. But a lot of people stay stagnant and don't have that motivation to be around those people. They just stay in their comfort zone, which tends to be lazy. So I'm glad you brought that up. So, all right. So
it's like that whole, is your mindset serving you, like when I started, because I had my son so young and I was like, no one's going to be there for me. Like whatever I do, I've got to do it. Like I'm sink or swim. Like Mike said, like when he had his oldest, it makes you rethink everything. Like when I had my son, I was just like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to give him the best life ever. So you hustle so hard. And when you hustle so hard just to finish high school and get into college and finish college and take care of your son and everything like that, it's like, it's me. I'm doing everything on my own. That carried over into real estate. It's me. I'm doing everything on my own. I remember when I joined Investor Fuel Mastermind, and the first day I had to present, and they were like, why are you doing everything on your own? And I'm like, because I have to do everything on my own because I don't want a business partner. And they're like, no, like you need a team. Like you need a business partner. Like you either want to grow or you don't. So if you don't want to grow, you don't want to be here, don't get a business partner. If you want to grow, get a freaking business partner. So I got a business partner, and my business went like skyrocketed. And then I'm rocking and rolling with a business partner for a while, and I'm doing some things, but I still had to get out of like that crappy like wealth mindset. So I had to ask myself, like, is this mindset serving me? Like I know people way wealthier than me that have wealthy families, and like they seem so happy, and I'm freaking miserable and like jaded against them. Why? Like, is this mindset really serving me? Like I want to be that happy. Like I want to be that freaking happy. And the mindset wasn't serving me in a positive way. So I'm like, how do I get over this mindset? I'm just going to join a mastermind with these people and see what happens. And it was awesome. So you got to make yourself uncomfortable. Yeah.
So on that, April, I'd like to rewind just a little bit and kind of speak to maybe somebody that is listening to this that is in that healthcare field or in that job where maybe the reason they got into it is now a distant memory, and they're looking for maybe a way out or preparing to exit whenever they do retire, whatever their case may be. How did you go from that mindset of a respiratory therapist, where that's what you wanted to be, that's what you wanted to do, to real estate investor? Like you kind of glossed over the getting into a program, paying $20,000, whether or not there was enough substance to justify that fee. It obviously was a tipping point for you to whether the education was worth it or not. It was the catalyst to kind of get you that flywheel rolling.
Yeah.
How did the mindset work? Because I hear it a lot, and I'm sure you did or still do. It must be nice. And I totally despise that type of claim, because people only see the highlight reel. They don't see the folding the letters on lunch break. They don't see the going to court or the person threatening to sue you and all the crap, right? So how did you kind of get over that mindset to go from just little old respiratory therapist to real estate investor, whether it be the first deal or to full time?
Yeah, I can tell you it was hard as hell. And that's why a lot of people won't do it, because they don't want to go through the discomfort of it. I'd love to tell you, like, when I started in real estate and doing it on the side, like, the people you work with, you still have that camaraderie with them. Like, you're still going to work every day, that same department, you have stuff to talk about. And that's where my friends are. I worked with the same girls in the same department all the time. And then I had like this mindset of like, I'm taking care of people. And if I leave this job and I do real estate, this is where the wealth thing comes back around. It's like, that's gross. Like, I don't want to be in business. Like, I'm a person that helps people. Like, that's what I do. And like, I give and give and help and help. And now I'm going to go into some business field, like in real estate, and do what? Make money? Like, how is that helping people? So I had to get over that mindset, because then when I got out of it and started doing real estate full time for the first year and a half, it was very lonely and very depressing. And people always want me to tell them some shiny, happy story. And I'm like, it's not, it sucked. Like, I left and I didn't realize how hard it was going to hit me, that I would like go back and visit my department and visit the people that I worked with. And I had nothing in common with them anymore. I had nothing to talk about with them anymore. We had nothing in common. It was a very depressing first year and a half, because I wasn't in their loop every day.
Is it because you feel like your identity changed, or you just like your mindset changed, or
both? Yeah. It's like, now I'm working in real estate investing, I'm building wealth. You just don't have a lot in common anymore. You just don't, your whole everything has to change. Your whole circle has to change. And that's where like going to meetup meetings, like I created a meetup. I think I created my meetup in 2013 when I left my job, because I was driving.
I needed some friends.
Yeah. I was driving pretty far to other meetups, and I was like, well, I want to meet more people that are doing what I'm doing and heading in the direction I feel like I'm heading. So I created a meetup group and like made that happen so I could connect with other people. But the first year and a half, I felt very lost, like just kind of very lost, like felt like I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have a lot in common with my friends. I was losing this portion of my life. It's almost like you have to grieve that, I guess. I don't know if y'all have ever been through that, but it's not. I didn't think it was easy. I didn't leave and was like, hooray, awesome, my new life. Like,
yeah, and I think a lot of people think, obviously I have a little bit different story. I still do work, and I think a lot of people just think it's all puppy dogs and rainbows, and it's really not. Like,
no.
Like the entrepreneurial journey, like I've seen that picture before where it's like 10 a.m. you're on top of the mountain, by like noon you're down here. Like, this sucks. By like one, it's funny, but it's true.
Accurate. Yeah.
Exactly. So don't get me wrong. Like there's something I think wired in people that want to do that, like that they are the consummate, like they just know that eventually it's all going to work out eventually. Right. Yeah. But sometimes it's very hard to see that day to day. And it's very hard whenever you're around people that basically just don't understand what it is you're doing and why you're doing it.
Yeah.
So
it's very, everything that I've gone through in life that's worth it is extremely uncomfortable.
Sure.
Extremely uncomfortable. Like, I envy people if their journey's been like la la la. And sometimes I feel like if your journey's la la la, you're not really putting yourself where you need to be super uncomfortable. Because leaving my job and starting real estate full time and everything along the way, I'm like extremely uncomfortable. I hate it. And then I love it. So,
yeah. So my mom worked in the ICU for 25 years just outside of DC in the hospital. And she had the same when she left, like her lifestyle changed. So they still to this day, like once a year, they all get together and they relive the glory days. But what they have in common now is like, oh, I'm retired. Oh, do you remember this? Oh, do you remember that? And I see the same thing in the fire and the police department and any really first responder, military too, is when they leave, like their life changes. Their normal day-to-day life changes. Who they're surrounded by changes. So like for me, I have two separate lives. I have like a real estate life. I have a woodworking life. I have fire department life. And I think the mindset shift.
That was three, Aaron. Three lives.
Woodwork, I just want to throw in.
You must work on a truck because math is not strong suit.
But the mindset shift is a big thing. Is like your normal day-to-day life changes, and you have two separate lives. The people in the fire department don't really understand the real estate, and people in the real estate world don't understand the fire department, the nursing, the military, the police department. And when people retire, that's a big change of lifestyle. So you see a lot of guys from the fire department go start volunteering again, or go find something to do, like to keep themselves occupied. They just kind of lost for a little while. So it sounds like you went through that year of being lost So how did you start? Like once you started your meetup in 2013, like was that the next step for you to move forward in your mental state? Or
Yeah.
investing?
Because then I feel like I was surrounded by people who were kind of doing the same thing. So I could schedule like, hey, we're going to have a networking meetup. And I'd have like social time and people to talk to and people that were talking about real estate. And I could ask them questions and they could ask me questions. And, fast forward, it's interesting. I do a lot of passive investing and raising capital. And so now I talk to a lot of pharmacists and doctors and stuff like that, who are like hating life in the hospital and trying to get out of it. And I'm like, man, where were you when I was in the hospital? Getting into real estate, I would have loved to talk to you back then too. But yeah, it's just surrounding yourself with different people. Yeah.
So I've got a couple friends of mine that are doctors, and they spend like $5,000-6,000 a month on rent, and I'm like, buy something. Like that's $1 million mortgage. Just go buy something. And they always have an excuse as to why they can't. And it's different. It's interesting because they came from blue collar backgrounds and now they're wealthy, but they still hold on to that. Well, I don't want to commit. I'm like, you're a doctor. Come on, like, just buy something. It's the mindset shifts for people going from one class to another is different. Like low class, low middle class, high middle class, and then high class are just very different animals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we were talking about. We were talking about the other day with Todd. Is you grow up that way, and I'm curious to what you guys think. You grow up, and part of it I think is like somewhere in our subconscious we don't think we deserve that $1 million house. Like, how can I deserve $1 million house, or how can I deserve this? And it's because we have that mentality ingrained in us, especially blue collar, fire, healthcare, things like that. To where like you said, Aaron, you can't get over that mental hurdle of just doing it. And I was talking with Todd the other day. I'm like, do you think it's because we think like subconsciously we just don't deserve it? And that's why I think working on like you said, April, working on mindset is probably like one of the biggest components of success. And I know in Fuel, for example, we work so hard on systems and processes, and most of us at that point, we already know how to flip houses. We know how to wholesale. We know how to do all these things. It's fixing it up here that I think it's ignored a lot, but I mean, it's hugely vital. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like the $1 million house. It's like, I don't deserve it. And what are your friends going to think of that? What are your friends on Facebook that are firefighters and healthcare workers? And what are they going to think when you buy $1 million house?
Right.
Like
you just said, that's obviously you were dirty, slimy business people if you could afford that, and you ripped off a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Not
so
that
now
you
everyone's
provided
going to think that about
100
me.
jobs.
And like I mean, I talk to people every day in my family and just like everyday life that are like, man, everything's getting so expensive and I can't afford this and I can't afford that and I can't afford this. And like, am I hesitant to share what I do and can't afford on whatever social media and stuff? Yeah, because they're going to feel some type of way about it because they don't see what I've worked for and what I've built to get there, I
wonder if some of us, so for me, like I know I overpost our Facebook group a lot, and I like to put information out there because I like making people think. But I wonder subconsciously if it's like I am now achieving, so I feel bad, so I want to give back to the community. I actually really enjoy giving it back, but like a lot of people, once they start achieving their goals and achieving money, like there's like, it's mine, I earned it. What was it? Was it Snoop Dogg was like, I'd like to thank me. I'm the one that did this. I'm the one that put the hours in. I'm the one that started. On one hand, I'm like, I agree with you, but on the other hand, it's like you got to bring people up with you because otherwise, I think it's going to create a rift in your relationships. That's just my opinion. It could be different for everybody.
Yeah, and there's some people that you can bring up with you, but I can tell you, and I'm sure you guys have experienced too. There's some people that will complain, and you can show them like, hey, I can help you buy this 2-unit, live in 1 unit, and the other, then you won't even have to pay a mortgage. And they would rather complain and be stuck and barely able to make their bills than take that step that's scary for them. And you can work on that for years with them, and that will never change. And at some point, unfortunately, your relationship will go like this.
Because it's easier to sit at the table and say, it must be nice, than it is to get uncomfortable and take that action. People
don't want to be uncomfortable, and everything you have to get uncomfortable for everything. Yep. Yeah.
I was reading a guy yesterday. He had taught a guy how to structure a deal, right? So the guy was brand new. He doesn't know how to like write the contract up, talk to the people, or negotiate it. So this guy taught this younger guy. We'll say Joe taught Tom. So Joe was teaching Tom how to do this stuff, and he didn't even have enough money for the earnest money deposit. So he's like, Joe was like, "I'll give you your $2,000 for the earnest money deposit. I'll help you structure the deal. I'll help you write the contract up." And then he's like, "Well, what do you want in return?" He goes, "Give me my $2,000 back plus $2,000. So a good return. It's not that much money. The guy's supposed to make $30,000 or $40,000 back." But the younger guy balked at it and was like, "Well, that's too much. Like, why would I give you that much?" He's like, "Well, I just taught you how to structure the deal, write the contract. I taught you how to, I'm giving you the earnest money deposit. You cannot do this deal without me." And I feel like people like that, like they don't see the relationship aspect of it, and two, the long-term relationship that you can kind of, if he needs to go back to him and teach him stuff, if the bridge is burned now.
The bridge is burned at that point. That's kind of like the people that we've talked about it before, but April, I know you're in a couple groups and do some coaching, but have you ever had anybody, I don't know if you're still coaching, but for the example's sake, you tell them coaching is $10,000 for 5 sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Most people in, we'll call it just the average community, not even the first responder healthcare community.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are going to say $10,000 for 5 sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to balk at it, right? Versus if you think about it, it's like if those 5 sessions can teach me how to fish and I can now make $100,000, would you give somebody $10,000 to make $100,000? Most of us would say yes, but most people can't see that value. They only see the fact you're only getting 5 sessions or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's a total like mindset shift. Like whatever I paid for investor fuel, I paid 100 times all over again. Like I totally changed my business, completely changed my business. Like whatever I paid for my mastermind in now would pay it all over again. It totally has helped shift my mindset, something I have to work on daily. And people just don't see that. And it's coaching, it's helping someone with a deal. I see it on the private money side of things. Like sometimes I'll do a private loan to someone, or someone will need like a $600,000 private loan. And so a private money lender will come to me and be like, "Hey, this person's new. You know them. You sent them to me. They need a $600,000 private loan, but they're new. Will you co-sign on the loan? Because they don't have the liquidity and you have the liquidity. And I need someone that I can basically go after if they default on the loan." So then I'll go to the borrower and say, "Hey, your lender's asking me to co-sign on this loan. I'm going to co-sign on this loan, but I'm taking 30% of your profit to co-sign on this loan." And they want to balk at that. I'm like, what don't you understand? Like if you don't pay the $600,000, they're coming after me. They're not coming after you. Like I'm co-signed on the loan. So that's why I'm taking a piece of your profit. I'm getting paid for the risk that I'm taking on.
Yeah.
I'm also connecting you with a private lender that you're going to do this massive deal with and then probably do more deals with down the line. And they'll be like, "I just don't want anyone to take any of my profit." It's like, you got to like.
Then you can have 100% of the nothing.
Exactly.
Or you can have 70% of this deal.
Exactly.
It's like, not only that, if April makes money, this lender makes money, and I make money, now my network has expanded a little bit. And now, so
even the network alone, like joining a mastermind, like coaching or a mastermind, or even if people can't afford that, I'm like, just go to the meetup groups then. Just go to the meetup groups. They're usually really cheap or cost nothing, but just the cost to even just like network with other people and like expand your network, well worth it.
Yeah, totally agree. So I'd like to just rewind. We've definitely talked a lot about mindset, and I can agree it is by far the best real estate you can improve is the stuff between your ears. It's also the hardest.
Yeah.
So how did you basically get the money to do your first deal? Like when you were a respiratory therapist, how did you basically scrape together enough money to do that first deal?
Yeah, I didn't. I gave up profit, just like we just talked about.
Oh.
Like I didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. So we joint ventured with an investor in our area that was doing deals, and he gave us part of the profit for bringing the deal. A wholesaler brought us the deal. We had no money, and we took it to him, and he brought a private money lender who then became our primary private money lender for like the next several years. So I've never bought a deal with any of my own money, but I never would have met that lender if I didn't joint venture with that investor, and that investor wasn't open to joint venturing and giving me some of the profit, and he was taking some of the profit. Yeah.
Yeah. So I knew I kind of have heard you tell that story before, but kind of wanted to parlay it into what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
And, I helped somebody do a flip last year, and the long and short of it was they thought they were going to make about 60. They ended up making about 30. I'm sure that's never happened to anybody on this call, right? You always make more than you think, and it goes a lot faster with no headaches.
Right.
So, and I told the person, I said, listen, if you break even on this deal, you make $1, it's a big win.
You learn so
and
much.
They didn't say it, but their body language and everything said all that they needed to, that they did not agree with that.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm telling you, if you do this deal, basically I paired you up with the lender. I wholesaled you the deal. I paired you up with the lender. I got you the contractor. I got you the comps. I got you the realtor. Not all me, but for the sake of the story, yes. Basically handed it to him like on a silver platter. And I said, if you make $1, this is going to be a huge victory. And they were like, definitely not agreeing with it. Because I was like, once you know how to fish, like you can go fish wherever.
Yeah.
But they couldn't get outside of their mind that they were supposed to make 60 and they only made 30. I'm like, whatever. So some people you just can't get to see the light.
Yeah.
And I've just had to accept that fact. So you went from flipping 1 or 2 houses a year. Your husband had 2 small rentals.
Mm-hmm.
What did the next couple of years of your business look like? Because I know there for a while you were Berks County house buyers. You were flipping and flipping and flipping, correct? How did those couple years look after you left healthcare, and like kind of where have you grown to now as an investor? Because I believe that's shifted a little bit, right?
Yeah. So we probably flipped like 2 or 3 houses a year, just on the side, left healthcare, did it more full time. So we were buying small apartment buildings, like a 6-unit, a 2-unit, some single family homes here and there. And then when I left during like 06, 07, we didn't buy anything. I was working like a super intense job. The market was in a huge bubble. I didn't have the same mindset I have now. So now I feel like you just keep hunting. You can buy in any market. But back then I was newer and I hadn't been through a market cycle like that. So it just was scary. So we weren't buying then. Then in 08, we bought a whole bunch of single family homes and rentals when the bubble burst. And again, mindset shift. We had one private money lender for like a long time. And then I was like, oh, duh, April, like if you raise more private money, you can do more deals. But it took me a while to connect those dots because I was comfortable with this one person that could we could crank out 2 to 3 deals a year with this one person. So just became more intentional about that. And then I would say over the past 4 years, maybe it's 5 years now, I don't know, maybe 4 years, we started selling off our single family homes, because as you grow in your business, you just get to the point where you're like, okay, on the Berks County house buyer side, I took on a business partner because I joined a mastermind. So started building that business to do more than 3 flips a year and add in wholesaling because I never wholesaled before ever. And then on the rental side, really started looking at like what's making us money and what's like barely making us money. And the market was getting really hot. So how do we let go some of those properties that are barely making us money? So we started selling off a lot of our single family homes. And I'm not saying multifamily is the end all be all. I believe every market is different and people have to look at their market and what works for them. But what works for us when I'm buying in Pennsylvania is small multifamily. Like I love small multifamily. It performs the best. And I'm not just saying that from nothing. It's looking at income and expenses and what's cash flowing, and small multifamily performs the best. And the singles were not. So we sold a lot of the singles, which gave us a lot more liquidity. And I was private lending from a self-directed IRA for a few years. But then when we sold the single families, we had more money liquid. So I started learning about passively investing into syndication projects where you're basically like coming together with a whole bunch of other investors and just not really writing a check, you're wiring money to someone that's buying like a 200 some unit apartment building. And then you're getting passive income plus tax deductions. So I was like, the first time we did that and the tax deduction that we got for it, I was like, wow, how do we do that again? Like, let's do that again, because that's amazing, because we had done private lending on flips and small rental properties, and you don't get tax deductions for that. But when you do it in a syndication, you get tax deductions. So we're at the point that we needed those tax deductions. So we started passively investing, and I just started learning more about syndications. And then I started doing what they call co-GPing, which means someone finds a building and then they bring on other people to help raise capital for that building and help with asset management and stuff like that. So I started raising capital for some syndicators, and I've done that, I think, 3 or 4 times. And it's okay. It's fun. It doesn't light my world on fire, but it's okay. And then I bought a mobile home park, and now I do a whole bunch of stuff. So private lending's
Is that it?
Okay. Private lending's by far my favorite. But I feel like you go from like really hustling really hard, like flipping houses and wholesaling's a really hard hustle. It's hard. People don't realize it. Like you said, Mike.
It's a treadmill. That's how I describe it. It's
crazy.
A treadmill, and you never get off of it.
And then small multifamily, like I love it. We don't have property management in my market in PA. So it's like you self-manage or bust. That's it. Like you have to self-manage. There's no property management here. So we had to set up systems and processes in place to self-manage all of those, but it's still a little bit of work, but not as much. And you get to see your buildings appreciate and other people pay them off. And then private lending is like, whether you private lend on flips or private lend into syndications, just much easier.
Much easier. Let me ask you a question. So when I was younger, I think I bought my first property when I was in like 03 or 04. And then I've probably done 75 deals since then. So not a huge amount, but enough to learn. So I'm at the point now, like I don't want to flip again. Like I have no desire to flip because it takes so much more energy versus a buy and hold for me. And then you have to worry about the market changing. Like in the last 6 months, the rates, and Tyler can tell us better than I can, is I think rates have gone up 3 or 4%. So now, like what you could sell before, like can you make those same profit margins? So for me, like I've transitioned to buy and hold, and I'll probably transition to something else. Like I would love to do what Mike did and buy a storage unit facility, or did like a mobile home park. At what point for me, the changing point, or the changing of the tide was, I don't have enough bandwidth. I don't have enough energy to do multiple flips at a time. I just don't. It's not how I'm built. So I do like you were doing 2 or 3 a year, maybe 5 max. But like, what was your mindset shift from I don't want to flip anymore to let's do syndications, let's do loaning, let's do next thing?
So it really depends. I think it's a personal decision depending on where your money's coming from and what's paying your bills and what's going into like just stuff you can invest passively. So I think for us, when we sold some single family homes and we had more liquidity, it's like, do we need this money for anything right now? Not really. So can we use it to flip more houses or buy more rentals? Yeah, but do we really want to own more rentals? Like even now, when a building comes up, I'm like, do I really want to buy that? I mean, sellers will call me and I'll be like, I don't really think I want it. Like, do I know anyone that wants it? Because I just don't want to own another building. Right. It's like a pain to have more tenants and have another building to watch after. I just don't want to do it. If I do it, I'll do it in partnership. Like that's why I bought the mobile home park, because I bought it in partnership. I will buy stuff in partnership all day long, but individually, I will never buy anything individually ever again. It's just too much work. So for me, even now, sometimes I'm like, maybe I should sell some of my apartment buildings. Like I go back and forth with it, but like I still have my flipping wholesaling company, because it was always my company that paid my bills. Like even when I left healthcare, the flips replaced my healthcare income. So I went from having a healthcare job to everyone's like, oh, you retired when you were 35. I'm like, no, I guess. But all I did was retire into another job called house.
I started working sun up to sundown instead of 7 to 3. Yeah,
exactly. All you do is go from one job to another job. Just now you're self-employed and you have a house flipping job and you work harder than you've ever worked before. That's pretty much what happened. So I probably did the opposite of retired. So I still have that wholesale company because it still like pays bills. And then to me, my rentals are my retirement. Although now we have had them long enough that we do take income off our rentals, but for a long time we didn't. We just built up our rental portfolio. We never took money out of them. They cash flowed, but we just left it in there to go back into the rental properties because we had the flipping company that could pay the bills. So now our flipping company doesn't flip anymore. Cause I agree, Aaron, like, I think it's horrible. Like when people say to me, oh, I only own rentals, I've never flipped a house. I'm like, you are so lucky. Don't pursue that. Like, don't do that. Just buy rentals. But we wholesale. That's all we do out of that company now. We don't do any flipping. So we just wholesale. Cause I just don't want to get into that. It's too much of a headache. So wholesaling kind of pays the bills. Rentals also, but are also there for retirement. And the passive investing is just like income pretty much.
So on that, I take it you're investing some of your syndications through your self-directed IRA, but what? No. Okay. I'm not familiar with the co-GP. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it's kind of like, to me, it's like, okay, you put money into a syndication, you tie up some money, but like you can't, at least in my experience, that the dividends they pay, like it's not enough really to live on unless you have a big nest egg in these deals. So how do you actually get paid for these? Like, are you getting basically points for the amount of money you lend, or how's that work?
Yeah, so you get typically a return, like a cash on cash return. So, and you'll get like a preferred return, meaning if you're investing passively, the passive investors are getting paid before the people that actually, everyone owns the building, but the two main people that own the majority of the building. So like if I typically in a syndication, you have to passively invest like 75,000 is usually the minimum, or 100,000. So we'll wire $100,000. Then on that 100,000, we'll get like an 8 to 9% cash on cash return every year. So they'll send you a check. Some syndications are monthly, some syndications are quarterly. So in some of the syndications, I'll get like a $600 check a month. Okay, because they're paying monthly. Some syndications, I'll just get a $2,500 check quarterly. So you do get paid like while your money's there, but it is very illiquid. So that's the thing about putting your money into a syndication, is it's gone for like 3, 5, 7, 10 years, however long the project is. And it's not like you can say, oh, hey, I have this flip coming up and I really like my 100 grand back now. It doesn't work like that. It's like when you sign those papers and you send it, it's gone for years. So it's money that you don't need and won't need in the next 10 years, I would say. My self-directed IRA, I only private lend on flips to other people because the syndication, when you can use a self-directed IRA in a syndication, but you can't get the tax deductions because the government sees it as double dipping, because you're already getting tax benefits by having an IRA. So then they're like, you can't get you can't also take the tax deductions from investing in the syndication. Whereas if you use your own like savings money, you can get cash flow plus tax deductions.
So are you talking, when you are talking about the tax savings, are you talking about like a cost segregation and then
and then everybody shares in the bonus depreciation? Yeah.
We've gone over segregations before, and it's basically like they'll break down the cost of the house and get money back on taxes. Like that's the easiest way to describe it. How are you finding people? And this is Tyler does lending, Mike does lending, you do lending. How are you guys finding people to lend money to?
Oh yeah, like totally mastermind groups. Like, I mean, if any three of you guys came to me and was like, hey, I have this project, I mean, blah, 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 I'd be like so excited because I know you and I know you're good people, you know? So like, I don't lend to like strangers. Like mostly everyone I've lent to, I've met either like mostly through mastermind groups. Like I've met them through mastermind groups, or I've met them at a meetup group, like somehow in my circles, like in my area. But I have people reach out to me all the time. I don't even know who they are. And I'm like, that's not really quite how I work. I mean, some big hard money lenders that have endless amounts of money might work that way, but that's not how I work. Yeah.
Mine's been my meetup pretty much.
Yeah.
That's how, because then well, not even tell them, you just kind of like word gets around.
Feel them out.
And and like you can kind of informally vet people before you ever actually vet them. You know, you're like, that guy,
never,
not happening.
I was going to say, we see all their presentations, so you know who you would lend to and who you wouldn't. And that's how I've everybody I've lent to has been from a mastermind I've been to. And
Yep.
I've talked to them, I've hung out, I've eaten with them, I know their business. And like April said, that's my thing. Is this person a good person? Because my biggest thing is if the shit hits the fan, will they be the person that I think is going to do what they need to do to pay me back? And that's really my biggest qualifier. Like, not that I'll overlook anything, but my biggest emphasis is placed on what kind of person is this, and then everything else after that follows. So yeah, everybody I've lent to has been somebody that I know from a mastermind, and so far it's worked out well.
So how do you guys find a mastermind? How about that? How did you guys find Investor Fuel? Because I know that's how you all met.
So when I came into Investor Fuel, it was literally because I had lunch with a friend of mine who was also in real estate, and she was like, basically sat down at the table and was like, "You look like shit." And I'm like, "Well, I work like 80 hours a week and I hate real estate." Like, and I gave up my healthcare license when I left. I'm like, but I'm just going to go be a administrative assistant in healthcare because I know all the lingo. So I'm going to be the best admin ever. Because I don't have a license anymore, so I can't go back. And she was like, "You don't need to quit. You just need to like learn how to do what you're doing better. And you do that by joining a mastermind." I was like, "What's a mastermind?" Like, I didn't even know. I was just so in my own world of like grinding and grinding and grinding. And she's like, "Have you like Investor Fuel?" She's like, "Did you ever listen to Mike Hambright?" I'm like, "No, I don't know who that is." She's like, "Oh, listen to this podcast, but then listen to this guy, check out this person and check out this person." She gave me like 4 different like people that had podcasts or that she had heard about that have masterminds. And I looked into all 4 of them. And then, so I think the first part I tell people is like identifying exactly what do you need? Like, what do you need? Because for some people, like they need to grow and systematize their flipping business or their wholesale business. At another part in my life, it was, I need to really change my mindset around like wealth and money. So that led me to a different mastermind. So it's identifying what you need, but I think interviewing the people whose mastermind you're going to join, like not just joining it. And it goes back to what Tyler said about connecting with people you lend to. It's the same way when you're hiring a coach. You have to connect with that person. You have to know that they're there to help you, that they are like, to me, servant leadership is like super important. Like they go the extra mile to like go out of their way and help you. Yeah. And I think you can find that just by talking to people on the phone and feeling them out pretty much.
Mike and Tyler, how did you guys find the masterminds you're in?
Same thing for me. I listened to Mike's Flip Nerd podcast forever. And then that was kind of like April said, I felt like I had a good feeling about Mike just based off of that. And then you investigated, and then I don't know if they still do, but they allowed you to come to a meeting for free to like kind of check it out. And that's what I did. And then I signed up afterwards. And then the one previous to that, same thing. I had listened to both of the guys on podcasts. They were actually local to me, and I knew people who knew them, and same thing. I just vetted them out based off of that info. And both of them that I joined have been really good. So it's just getting a good feeling about the person. And I like that servant leadership. You can kind of tell if somebody's in this to make money or if they truly want to see your business grow. And if they do, that's awesome. They'll make all the money they ever need to make. And for me, it's like, if this person cares about my best interests, then you're going to grow. And then in turn, you refer them out to everybody that you know. So.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Mike? How did you find the mastermind?
I'm trying to think exactly how. I think there was a guy in our local market that I think was getting out of another mastermind because it was, I don't know, falling apart or whatever, turning into a sales fest. And he was looking at it, and we had lunch, and he said, "You should take a peek at it." So we did. And I'm pretty sure that's how we ended up kind of doing what Tyler did. We went and checked it out, said, "Hey, this is pretty cool," and just kind of went from there. Mm-hmm. And, I feel like a moron sometimes. I should take my own advice because, like, I haven't been to a meeting in probably over a year. And
it'll feel so good when you go.
And I'm like still paying for it every month. But to the credit, like, it's not necessarily the meeting that is where, not that there isn't value there, but it's like a lot of the relationships I've built out of that room. It's still worth it, So yeah, you're right. Like, the next one is in Nashville, which I would love to go to, but I'm going to be in Destin for that one. So I'll probably go to the one after that in Dallas. Nothing really exciting about Dallas, but I'm going to try and get back to at least an in-person meeting here eventually.
And you know what you said earlier about people and their roadblock with like paying for a mastermind is like, if you really want to meet the people you're going to work with in the future and meet your next network, that's where you're going to meet them. Because if you're willing to pay for that, like-minded people that you want to work with and network with are also going to be willing to pay for that. You're all moving in the same direction, and you will all pay for that. So that's where you're going to find the people that you're going to work with that are of like mind.
Yeah, I've often heard it referred to as the fee isn't to get into the room, it's to keep the people that don't belong out of the room. And that's
exactly what it
may sound shitty to some people, but like it's valid.
I like that. That's
very
a good
valid.
So keep that one.
It's so pocket. True.
Yep, so true.
You keep a lot of the butters out when you do that. Like
nailed it.
it's huge, and you have to protect that space too, because if you don't, you will get those people, and that mentality, just like the positive mentality mindset, is contagious, and you get a lot of butters in there.
I love that, Tyler. Good. It's like one thing comes out of this podcast, and that was it.
Butters.
I love that. It is so true. It's so true.
So April, what are you working on now? Like what's in your future?
So now that I have kind of more financial freedom, time, space freedom, I'm really passionate about affordable housing and learning about affordable housing, which is a whole nother monster. It's been crazy getting into it and reading books about it. So we bought the mobile home park, which was like our first affordable project, which has been pretty awesome to see. It's in a great area in Tennessee, and we have a waiting list a mile long, and people always wanting to live there because it is affordable compared to everything else. And we're looking at buying some shared housing, like big houses that people can share, so they would pay like by the bed. I don't know how that's going to work out. We're still in the midst of that. We'd like to use it for seniors that are coming out of homelessness. So like seniors that have been in the homeless shelter, but now they need like that next place to go because the houses are all handicap accessible. And we're not providing like care or meds or anything like that. We're just providing housing for them.
It's like a halfway house.
But so they have to be like independent seniors. Yeah. So what I'd like to do now that we're like buying these houses and we've seen what they look like and what the need is and what people can pay per bed is we want to duplicate that now and build those down in Tennessee. So buying lots and building some type of shared affordable housing. So my dream is to build affordable tiny home or just like small house community for seniors. And I love seniors. That's like totally my jam. I could hang out with like 90-year-olds all day long. But there's a lot that goes into that I didn't realize. Like, so I'm spending a lot of time learning about like low income housing tax credits and tax exempt bonds and reading books about things that make my brain want to explode. But again, I'm completely uncomfortable, have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm just going to hope that it all turns out for the best.
So there's different places in the world I've been where that's pretty common is like by the bed or by the room. So there's it's almost like dorm housing where everybody shares a bathroom, but you stay in your own little dorm room and you rent it by the bed. And it's actually, the US doesn't have much of it except for the hostels, but around different parts of the world is a lot more popular than it is here. And I think with the affordable housing issue that the country has, it can be something in the future for the US to embrace. So I think and we've talked about this before for the tiny homes and stuff like this, but I love it. I think it's a good use of space for people.
Yeah, it's definitely not something I would have done probably early in my career, just because you grow and I feel like when you get to the point where you're more liquid and you have some income coming in from rentals, you can take on a little bit more risk than you did when you were a newbie. And I would say we're definitely taking on a little bit more risk by going down this path with the shared houses, but I feel like it's going to teach us a lot, and it's a direction that, like you said, the United States is going. I mean, housing is completely unaffordable right now. Yeah.
There's a Connex box apartment complex in DC by Catholic University where they tore down an existing building, they put up a Connex box apartment unit where each Connex box is a unit, and then they have a shared common area, and they made a lot of money off it. We'll go into that deeper some other time, but like it's definitely out there. It's just not mainstream yet.
Yeah.
So is there anything that we've missed that you'd like to go over?
No, I don't think so. I could talk all day to you guys.
I was going to say, I could talk. I could sit here and ask details about this mobile home park. Like, I'm interested in a lot of this other stuff.
We can always hop back on another call.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
I'm down for 2-part.
Yeah.
So yeah, we might have to do a second part to this sometime in the near future. But
cool.
I know we have to kind of wrap up for the time's sake. But Aaron, I guess you have the last question or two here.
My last 2 questions for you, April.
Okay.
The first one is, and it's phrased differently, the same thing I usually do. Is normally, what's your motivation? But I guess it's also, what is your why?
Yeah. So my motivation comes from a lot of things. I think just like a lot of things that have happened in my past motivate me to make a better future for not just myself and my family, but also not wanting anyone to have to go through or struggle like I had to go through or struggle. Like I tell people, like, I never want anyone to have to like sit in a welfare office or like go through the things that I've gone through or be looked down on because they can't afford something. And my why is I just want to change as many lives as possible before I'm in the ground 6 feet under. Like, and I found the only way you can have the greatest impact on the world and change the most amount of lives you can is to grow wealth, and not just in your pockets, but up here in your mind too. It really is the only way to change the world. Nobody that's living in a poverty mindset is changing the world. Can people do things to change the world if their pockets are empty? Yes, but they can't do it if they're living in a poverty mindset. So it's really growing wealth with real estate, but also growing that wealth mindset so that we can do things like I can go out and build an affordable housing community or raise money to build orphanages in India or whatever the case may be, so that we can keep lifting people up and changing people's lives. So that's why I wake up and do what I do every day, because there's so many people out there that are struggling and have less and need to be lifted up and deserve a better life.
Damn, that was good. That's going to be a little breakout for a future like little snippet. All right, so last question for you. If you could go back and give your younger self advice, it doesn't matter if it's a 16-year-old, a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, what advice would you give your younger self?
Yeah. That you don't just have to rely on yourself. Like, there's so many people out there that will help you get to the next level, but you have to be open to it. Like, when you're shut down and you have those walls up because of something from your past or something in your mindset, you're slowing your growth. So I wish I could have told my younger self to partner sooner and get my butt in a mastermind room faster than what I would be way further ahead on my journey. And I have no regrets about my journey and where I'm at now, but I would have gone a lot faster and farther if I would have known that at a younger age.
That's good advice. That's really good advice.
Yeah.
I need to take that advice myself, but that's another therapy session. All right, we're reaching just over an hour. So April, thank you for spending an hour with us.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm not gonna let you say no, but we're gonna plan on you coming back for another hour.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
Hurry up, mute her microphone. She can't say no.
All right, guys.
Yeah, we can talk more about the Ebbets and all the things that are good in the world. So.
Yeah, butter. All right, guys. First Responder Financial Freedom with April Crossley. This has been a great episode. Thank you for coming with us, and we will talk to you guys and see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks again for spending some time with us today. If you found value in anything you heard, please share with someone who may benefit. We look forward to connecting between shows in our Facebook group, First Responder Financial Freedom. Till next time.